So we slapped a random moving average on a random indicator and decided to make a video about it. It's kind of fire though. So we are continuing on with our weird and wonderful series by profiling something that really anybody can do. But you guys have probably noticed if you actually do this, you can't just put a moving average on anything and expect it to work better. But when you pick the right combination, it can actually be very good. This is not a combination I would have ever thought of, but this is something that Dan found that was originally coded for TradingView. All you TradingView people, you may like this one. And it actually does really well. So we're going to talk about it. Thank you, by the way, for putting up with our late video schedule. I am at the very end of my own travel schedule, so we should be getting back on track soon. But again, thank you for waiting an extra day. Let's go ahead and get into this thing. Now, if you're new, you are at the #1 indicator channel in all of YouTube. It's always been that way. But we do things a certain way. Please don't ask basic questions down in the comment section. Instead, go here to NoNonsenseForex.com, read the first page, watch the first video, and get started. Get yourself caught up, and then come back here. For the rest of us, let's go over the specs for the WPR_MA. The year is going to be 2023 when this is officially coded. Williams %R has been around since 1973, but for posterity, this was a 2023 coded indicator, at least for MT4 it was. It's going to be a confirmation indicator. And you can probably guess it's going to be a 2 lines cross indicator once we put a moving average on it. And as far as exit indicators go, 2 lines cross indicators generally lend themselves to be very good exit indicators overall. With this particular one, I just haven't had time to really look at it, so I can't tell you. And I can't just guess at it because, as you guys know, the Williams %R is not super smooth. Even if you smooth it out yourself, it's still not as smooth as other indicators are. So as always, you're just going to have to look and test it yourself. So what we did here, if you remember these videos from the past, putting a moving average on an indicator can do some really, really great things. And then the Williams %R video was a really interesting video I did to show you that some indicators that attempt to do something are actually so bad at what they do on the surface that if you do the opposite of what they're intended to do, you will actually have better results. But what if you were to take a moving average and put it on this guy and then smooth it out? Could that work? And what's actually interesting about this, and Dan goes into this more on the blog and in his video, which I'll link you both to in a moment, is simply putting a moving average on top of an indicator is one thing, but actually putting it on there to start and then adjusting things around can actually yield you different results. It's a really interesting concept that he goes over, but I'm not going to go over it here. I'm just going to show you what's going on. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. It is about what you would expect it to be. Now, we took away the border lines, the 90 and the 10, or the -10, -90, whatever it is on Williams %R, and then added this here moving average. So when the blue line crosses and closes above the moving average, that is your signal to go long. When it does the opposite, that is your signal to go short. Pretty darn easy. Now you'll notice, because this thing is so jittery on its own, you're going to see all these signals here that you really don't want, but that is where smoothing this indicator out really comes into play, and then adding on the other pieces of your algorithm come into play even further. So it's more than meets the eye here. We'll see on the results. Before we get to the results, let me remind you, no matter what you see here, it doesn't matter. You have to test this in your own system. I just had somebody ask me, what's a better indicator, this one you profiled or this other one you profiled? I'm like, this is not an answerable question. You have to test them. Stop being lazy. I am just showing them to you. I am just profiling them after we had decided which ones are worthy. And believe it or not, this one is worthy. Before we get to it, though, also know what I'm giving you down below in the description. You are getting a place to where you can learn how to test this yourself on the MT4 Strategy Tester is my automation blog. There's an embedded video in it. Check it out. You will, as always, get a link to the blog. You're going to see the tweak settings. You're going to see the further intricacies of what we're talking about with this indicator today. The blog is almost always going to be where you find that extra information out. And then, as I mentioned before, Dan also talks about this on his version of this video you're seeing right now. He always gives you extra information that I don't. He shows you how this thing moves in real time to show you that it doesn't repaint. Always a lot of cool stuff there. You will also get a secondary email address if you want to send in an indicator that you like to see if it can make the show. We have done 4 or 5 so far, and they've all been quite good. But if you want us to do one, don't tell me in the comments section. Send it to this email address instead. And then, as always, the most popular place in the entire world for people to be. It's right here. The indicator library. We can download this indicator and every indicator we have done here on the Indicator Profile Series. Let's go ahead and take a look. I will warn you, Dan has been traveling too. He forgot to put the 4-hour results up. So you're just going to see the daily, but I will say the 4-hour traders have not gotten the best of it these past couple months, and the results have not been very good. So I would not expect the results here to be a whole lot better. So we're not missing out on much, but rest assured we will be bringing the 4-hour results back in the next video. So let's just deal with it for this week. We have the EURUSD coming up here, and this is going to be good. In this environment, we're hitting almost 9%. Right off the rip. So we do like that. Really good win-loss ratio too. So off to a good start here. Let's check out gold, and gold is very good. Now gold has been treating us very good, but this is on probably the higher band of what we've been seeing lately. So who knew? Putting a moving average on the Williams percent frickin' R, for Christ's sakes, is actually yielding this type of good results. Now, if you want to be humbled, we just go straight to the S&P. And honestly, from what we've been seeing lately, a little over 5% is not a bad result. Good win-loss ratio. You could do worse. And I want you to run a little experiment for me. I'll explain it to you after we look at Bitcoin. So with Bitcoin, great win-loss ratio right here. And 20%, which has not been as high as we've seen on Bitcoin. You know, we've gone 40%, even as high as 50%. But what I want you to do is if you have downloaded any of those 40, 45, 50% indicators on Bitcoin in the past, test them in the past 12 months and see what you get. It's probably going to be lower, and I want you to measure that versus what you're getting right here. This is a nice solid 20%. I think you can now see how those like bombastically good indicators that we showed you, a year ago, maybe more, are doing in this environment. Can it beat this 20%? If it can, then you probably have something really good. So this is how we take advantage of these slower times, by measuring our indicators that we're maybe not using right now up against these slower times to see how they do. Because as we all know, markets go crazy and then markets get really slow, and this happens on the short term, medium term, and on the long term too. But overall, a very interesting video, very interesting find, and I can't believe it worked as well as it did, but it did. So kudos to the person who thought of this, and we will see you in a couple weeks here. But don't forget, it is all things finance here. Trading Psychology Podcast every other Monday, Indicator Profile Series every other Wednesday, blogs sometimes on Thursday. I'm not sure what we're doing this week. And then every Saturday, the 10-Minute Contrarian Investing Podcast. So keep it locked right here, everybody. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, and go get it.